29th. Thank you for your patience while we got the required quorum for our meeting tonight. First item on the agenda is item number 1, which is public comments.
You may have somebody here electronically that have to unmute or wave their hand and call on them. See one name I don't recognize.
Any members of the public who wish to speak, wave your Zoom hand or
Unmute.
or unmute.
Gabby's a teacher in Shakespeare.
Okay.
Moving into item 2 on the agenda, finance, which is both the treasurer's report and the SVSU budget status report. Tonight, the treasurer's report has not yet been posted. There is the budget status report, and we just need a motion to accept the report.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay. Item 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes minutes from the last meeting, warrants, leave of absence, retirements, resignations, and nominations. Like a motion to accept the consent agenda. Second. Any discussion?
What's the protocol for abstaining from one item? I just wasn't here.
We could take that item separately.
What's that?
I mean, the minutes is just accepting the minutes,
Accepting
correct?
this.
We're not
You're gonna
approving the
change it,
minutes,
right?
we're accepting that.
Accepting this.
Okay, nice.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And any abstentions? All right, item 4, preliminary SVSU for year 25 budget review.
Let's go to the featured director of finance,
Featuring Renee.
Renee Gord.
So
We didn't put this, all the administrators are here electronically who will speak and address their part of the budget.
before I get started, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the structure and how this works, because I know we do have some new board members that may not be here tonight, but if they do go back and watch this. So because the SVSU is not its own taxing entity, it's kind of like the umbrella entity to all the member districts. The SVSU budget gets set by this board. We then take any offsetting revenues and we take the net of that and we build that into the local budget, so all the member district budgets. That's what all of our towns vote on. We will look at assessments most likely next time we meet, and that's really what's going to show you, your individual boards, what this budget's impact is going to have on those budgets.
But you don't have enough information from the state yet to begin.
There's a lot of variables going on right now, correct? But yes, we should have that for next meeting. We do have some double checking going on of fund balances and possible deficits as well that we need to make up. So then, once, this board does its thing, and as I said, it gets built into the local budgets. And then once we have that, things can kind of start rolling a little bit more. So each individual board will then begin to be able to drill down to, what the ed fund demand is going to be. We'll be looking at what our student populations are by school district. And then CLA usually comes in the middle to the end of December. So that's like the final piece before we can actually kind of get down to what we think is going to be a potential tax rate for member towns. So what we're going to look at tonight is what we call quote unquote our local budget. So that means this is the one that's going to impact your district's budgets. There are other funds that the SVSU has that are grant funds that aren't rolled into this because we don't get those allocations until much later in the spring. It's usually April when we find out what that money is. So we just look right now at what our immediate local budget is. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. So in the packet, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. So anybody that might be at home and wants to follow along.
Renee, can I just ask a
Sure.
question for hopefully the folks that will be watching this that are new? So this budget gets parsed out. I know you said this, but I want to make sure it's clear. This budget gets parsed out and divided to individual districts, whether it be it the elementary district or the Arlington School District or the MAU district, based on.
So those facets of the SU budget that impact all of our member districts will get allocated out by a proportion of the students that we have. Historically, we've been looking and using equalized pupils and using that proportion to allocate out those costs. So for instance, the administration, that impacts every one of our boards, so that gets allocated out between all 5 member districts. We have other pieces of this local budget that are directly assessed, which, for example, special education, we keep track of that by district. Audit is another one that's specific by district, so those are direct assessments. And then we do have some other smaller variables that we have within the SU that are operational, but don't impact the non-operating districts. So those don't get factored into those budgets. And then there are a few things in Arlington and Sandy that are carried in their local budget, so the SU doesn't go into that in pre-K. So it's a massive spreadsheet that we will look at next time to see how that all breaks out. But yes, you're absolutely correct in how it works. Sure. So in the packet, I have organized this, first of all, by category. So the page 1 goes along with pages 2 and 3 of the handout, which is a narrative. So essentially, I'm giving you kind of the highlights of each of those budget categories, which we will go through. Pages 4 and 5 is the same budget, but just broken out by department or function. And then pages 6 through 9 are the associated narratives to go along with each of those. And then the final page in the handout that I have for the folks here in the room is just the list of acronyms that we frequently see. And then online, I've also included a little bit more of a detailed breakdown of the budget, which is by category, but then it also adds function. Nope, I said that the wrong way. It's by function, and then the categories are listed underneath each of those. The reason I do this is because this budget has now hit the over 3,000 line mark. So I wouldn't want to bury everybody with that information. So I try to assemble it in a way that's more manageable and understandable for everybody. So with that, we will jump right in, starting on the, we'll start right in with budget category. So the first 2 items are salaries and benefits. So the budget that you have before you, you're seeing the actual expenses for FY 21, 22, and 23. The column E there is our current year's budget that we're currently working in. And then the projected budget or the requested budget for FY 25 and the variance and what that percentage is. So all of the current staff that we have are going into this budget, are in this budget unless otherwise specified. And then in the narrative, what I've done is kind of identified what some of these changes are. But the first thing I wanted to mention is we do have a factor in for salary adjustments, but it is up in the air because of negotiation. So I don't know if you want to speak a little bit about.
Currently, we will meet again this Monday with the association for their counter proposal. The association's original proposal was almost a 15% increase for next year for teachers, and it's 20% plus for support staff. The board counted with a 2-year increase of 7% in each year. That was presented at the last meeting. So we anticipate a response from the association this coming Monday. So it's currently that we're getting pretty far apart at this point.
Okay, so again, we have a factor built in for possible negotiations where that might land, and then also for non-unionized staff that are impacted by those negotiations. Proposed position changes that you're seeing in the salaries and benefit lines before you. The first is a request to add a 0.5 FTE for a data and curriculum specialist, which is about $54,000 with the benefits. And this we feel is important because of how critical the data is within the SU. Right now, we are in the window of correction for our average daily membership counts. So being able to have an additional set of eyes on that data to make sure that we're counting every student that we have, they're being counted correctly, they're being accounted for in the correct towns. And then
More importantly, too, having someone who's identified as the responsive parties that we're right now. It's housed in curriculum, it's housed in technology. We have multiple people looking at it. So we have two different sets of numbers that are now trying to be reconciled as opposed to having a designated responsible person for it.
So along with just that data of our student count, we're under continual requests or mandates from the state for reporting, whether it's through curriculum, whether it's through, my department. I actually just got a notice today that I have something due to the ALE on Friday. So it's, somebody that can help support that role. So that 0.5 we feel would be beneficial. There was a request from the tech department to add a 1.0 FTE back into their tech services budget. They actually had a person working part-time through the course of last year. So they found that the reductions that they had made were a little bit more than what they could sustain. So they would like to add one more. I think there's still 4 positions, give or take. I could give you an exact number that were eliminated from the budget in the previous year. So that is in this current budget before you. Our paras that provide service to Mount Anthony, North Bennington, and SVU ESD are employed by the SVSU. So the next bullet there is 3 elementary paraprofessionals, but because they're employed by the SVSU, this board essentially has to approve it, but they're requested by the administrators in the building. So 2 are requested at Shaftesbury and 1 at Benell, and these are local paras, so they're not special education supporting student services. Those are in, so there's 3 there. And then another 3, which are district-wide intensive special needs specialists. They're currently serving in our building, or these roles, I guess I should say, are being provided by a contracted service. They are funded currently through ESSER. We know that money is going away at the end of the year. So the request to continue that alternate K-1 program is there, but with those additional supports. So just an FYI to those of you that are on the SVU ESD board, you will be seeing other positions being requested also in support of this program, the alternate K-1. It's really, I think, heavily focused on the social emotional aspects of those students at that age group. So those are our locals. Next, we have early childhood programs. So Megan and Early Ed is seeing an increased need in speech. So she has requested that we put 2 speech and language pathologist assistants into this budget. So we've done that. And then student services, so this is gonna be K to 12. One BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst, currently funded through ESSER. So we've added that into the budget before you, which is split 50-50 in this budget. It is a district-wide position, so if we find that there's need in other districts, we could certainly make sure that those needs are being met with this role.
Thank you.
The next bullet down, one associate director of student services. So both administrators at Mount Anthony Union Middle School and Mount Anthony Union High School requested a dedicated associate director of student services. Dr. Abbott looked at some numbers and felt that the child count would warrant that. So we did go ahead and add that in. In addition to adding, so there's only one, I should back up and say there's one associate director serving both campuses with schools right now. That one person is partially funded out of IDEA. That's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And we're seeing a pretty significant increase year after year on our grant funds and an assessment that's coming through the state for the teacher retirement system. So this year presently, anybody that is being funded through a federal grant that is a teacher or has an educator's license, automatically, whatever salary they're making, I have to take 25.64% of that, and it goes directly into teacher retirement. So more advantageous likely for us to look at other positions that are municipal employee retirement participants as opposed to teacher retirement. So we're pulling that 0.3 out of IDEA, so I've included that in this budget as well. We do have a projected increase in the number of students with autism spectrum disorder coming in next year. So we don't actually have square footage to be able to add another classroom for the New England Center for Children. We have, and Kate, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 3, or do we actually have the 4th classroom? I think we do, 1 at Benel and 3 at Molly. So we have 4 at the elementary level for SVU ESD. We have 2 at Mount Anthony Union Middle School and 2 at Mount Anthony Union High School. So because we don't have any more space, we're looking at assigning the students coming in to be able to have a one-on-one, somebody to help with the behaviors that will allow the other students to be able to push back into their classrooms. So the registered behavior technician is a relatively new category on our educational support personnel contract. So we have ARAs, we have intensive special needs specialists, and then the RBTs, registered behavior technicians, is that group 3 higher rate of pay, but they also are certified for that role. So those are in. And then one last significant item that's kind of driving what you're seeing in this budget before you is a trial run that we have right now for providing out-of-district transportation. The current contract that we just awarded to D4, we did solicit bids from multiple vendors. We only received 1. The resulting contract is a pretty significant increase in what our out-of-district transportation costs are, nearly double. So Dr. Abbott and Holly have been working to come up with some alternative situations. So this trial run we have right now, we have a couple of people who have offered to come in, pass the background checks, and they are driving vehicles for us to run these students that are attending paid placements in Rutland and Pittsfield. Those runs right
Least
now. I'm sorry?
Leased vehicles too.
Yeah,
They're not-
they started
they're not
as their
transporting.
own, but we found that it's just gonna put too much wear and tear. It's 100 miles a day, just up and back, and then they've gotta go back again in the afternoon, so about $180,000 a year for one of those runs if Dufour was to provide it.
What's the service up there?
They're out of district placement, so they're students with needs that can't be met with the staff and the programs that we have here. I wouldn't venture to say anything beyond that. I don't know if
It can vary from, like, it may be Rutland, it may be Brattleboro, it may be Pittsfield. We've done multiple different placements outside of the district, so it's.
they're specialized schools.
Yeah.
So these folks coming in, we're paying them an hourly rate. They're not benefits eligible because they're not working enough hours. So we factored, that in for the 2 runs per day for 180 days in the regular school year, possibly 6 weeks during the summer. And for Mount Anthony and SVU ESD, those are about $66,000 total in this budget. So that's versus having Dufour do their runs at $170,000 a piece. So that's nearing the $700,000 mark. So between the two, we're hovering the 120, 130 mark versus 700. So just kind of the way that we're trying to work around potential significant increases in what we have before us in their contracts. The next 3 bullets are mainly here just to kind of identify some changes that you're going to see when you look at the budget in the format of the department or function. So they're really not a significant impact dollar-wise, but it's just moving positions from one classification to another. So we had a vacant technology integration specialist, which we can see down the road when we get into the other section is funded in 2213. We've moved that to English language learning, and that's a direct instruction, which is 1101. We've also moved a vacant associate director position that has been vacant for a couple of years in early childhood to a universal pre-K coach. So that was going from a 2490 to a 2219. And then we have a current special educator position, which was transitioned already to a clinician. So that's going from a 1201 to a 2135. And then, of course, we have associated benefits with all of these positions. On top of that, the Vermont Education Health Initiative has projected what their needs are to run the health system for next year. They have proposed rate increases for the 4 plans that are out there for any of our employees, any of our benefits eligible employees, I should say. The Platinum plan, and they have proposed a 15.7% increase. Gold is 15.9, Gold CDHP 16.4, and Silver CDHP an increase of 16.7. This is negotiated at the state level, so we really don't have any control over what these benefits are for our classifications of employees. And we really don't have any say over the rate either. So it's currently with the Department of Federal Financial Regulation at the state. And at least as long as I've been in this position, I haven't seen the DFR cut the rates. Pretty much what VHI puts out is what they need, and they have been approved. So we have factored those into the budget you have before you. Just a side note with that too is that the way that the benefits are negotiated, the employer only pays towards the gold CDHP or the silver. So if we have an employee that elects the more robust plans at the higher end of the platinum or the gold, they pay additional premium towards that. So the employer is the gold CDHP or silver. Along with that, also negotiated at the state level, is any contracts that are, or any staff that are not currently paying 20% of their premium every year, they notch a little bit closer So we do have our support staff contracts that are not at that 80-20 split yet. So as of January each year, they increase 8%, the employer decreases 1%, so we factor as well. As I said, the benefits associated with position changes I had just outlined are in this budget. The Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement System is increasing next year by 0.25% for both our SU and those folks that were in Arlington that are in a different group. I have on the narrative just the folks that are in Group B, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong. We have Group A, Group B. One is 5.5%, and then the folks from Arlington have been grandfathered into their tier, which is going to 7%. So it's like 0.25% increase for them as well. I'm also forecasting that we're probably going to see an increase in another assessment to teacher retirement that comes from the state. And this is on any licensed teachers that are new to the teacher retirement system after 2015. The employer gets assessed an annual fee for them. It just goes directly to teacher retirement. Currently this year, it's $1,509 per teacher. It has been increasing roughly $100 a year. So I factored that in as well. The dental rates for next year are flat. They were actually approved by DFR earlier this week, so there were no impacts there. But we do have a new tax that's going to be starting July 1st through Act 46, which is the child care contribution tax. It's a 0.44% on wages earned in Vermont. So this is not just school specific, it is every employer. Anybody that's earning wages in Vermont, so if you're an out-of-state employer and you have employees here, it's a new tax, and even folks that are self-employed will see this new tax beginning July 1. There is a notation with this that the employer can charge 25% of this to the employee. Could, it doesn't say shall. So in a unionized environment, I suspect that would be something that would have to be negotiated unless there's a determination by the legislature or the AOE that says, yes, they're going to pay. We do have the president of my organization, the Vermont Association of School Business Officials, has reached out to their legal team to see on a statewide basis if they care to take a stance. So all that being said, before I move on, I don't know if there are any questions.
On the staff positions that have been noted for changes, are these, I don't know that I want you to go back through all of them, but how many of them are direct assessments to member districts versus considered to be administrative costs that are proportionally allocated out?
So the data and curriculum specialist would go into curriculum. So that would be assessed out to our operating districts.
Okay.
So Arlington, SVSU. The technician is also just for our operating districts because it's part of the tech services team. So that would just be operating. The elementary paraprofessionals are specific to SVU ESD. And the district-wide intensive special needs specialists, those are actually, they're in the budget specific to SVU ESD as well.
You said currently?
Yeah. So if there were a student in another district, North Bennington, Arlington, that could benefit from this program, they could potentially come in, and then we would basically take the staff that we have and allocate a portion of them out to that district.
But if Arlington doesn't have any students attending these programs, are we paying for any of the staff to support these programs?
Not in the alternate K-1 program. So those staff are, so in this budget, those are specific to SVU ESD.
Okay.
And then the other staff associated are actually going to be in the local SVU ESD budget. The early childhood is for those that are participating, so it would be SVU, ESD, and North Bennington. And then I think each of,
The other ones look very.
yes, I think that, yeah, spelled them out there.
Can I just ask a question about non-operating? You mentioned that just a minute ago. Is that to say that the non-operating districts within DSU get no benefit from the positions that have been outlined here?
If they have a student in the program, they pay the respective portion of that. So we actually do have students, non-operating districts that are in the NEP program.
Yeah, but I'm going up, go up even higher, I think, on the technician and the data and curriculum specialist.
So so tech actually falls into two categories. We have tech administration, which everybody pays for, because it impacts all of our districts, all of our students. We have tech services, which are serving just the schools that we have that are public schools and operations. So these are the folks that are coming, helping the teachers, get their computers online, helping the students be able to get their Chromebooks up to take the tests. That help. So we parse that out. So because they're two separate functions, everybody will pay a portion of the tech admin, and then everything else falls to the operating districts essentially. And you'll be able to see it more specifically when we look at the assessments. There was something that predates me, but through I think it was probably North Bennington petitioned this board that they didn't want to have to pay all of the tech administration costs. So a portion of our tech admin staff get allocated to all districts, and then the rest of it falls to, again, the operating districts essentially. I don't know if you remember last year, there were other pieces that kind of started, it gets parsed out.
Yeah.
It's kind of complicated, but.
Since you mentioned tech, on the tech services, so Arlington is paying our share of the tech services portion of the SVSU budget. We also employ somebody in the Arlington district budget to provide tech services. So we're paying twice for services.
That has happened, but I'm looking to actually change that potentially, but there's a lot of.
That's positioned into the SU budget.
A lot of things have to happen for that to happen though, but
We don't want to lose the service that we're getting now. So don't take our people.
That's not the plan.
But no, I'm very aware of that situation. And if we
Through IT, which is our tech. There's benefit questions, differences of retirement systems, and
Is that the
So-
only position that we still have that's sort of a redundant services through SU plus funded through our local?
we have a public information coordinator, you have a public information
Yeah.
coordinator.
Okay.
I have, just so you're aware, I have sent a couple of thoughts to the Arlington administrators of things that I think we can pull out of that budget because it's being provided at the SU level.
And
So it's not about eliminating the position or moving the person, but moving the funding mechanism.
And when you talk about the administrative positions that are allocated out in our assessments, sort of proportionally, can we get, we're adding positions. I have no sense of what, maybe I do and I don't remember, what the org chart looks like to know what we're adding to, what the existing structure currently is.
I know Nick was working on that before, so yeah, we can definitely get that updated with the potential of, you know, what these positions are and what that looks like. Anything else? Yeah. So moving on to contracted services. 03 on the budget by category and so this is taking every single, you know, contracted service that we have across all of our departments and kind of lumping them together. So one of the big ones is the New England Center for Children contracts that we have for, again, the 4 classrooms at the elementary level, SVU, EFD, and then the 4 at Mount Anthony. Each of those are nearing, or if not are at $200,000 a piece. And for that, we receive an educator from NEC. And then they also provide us with a behavior support BCBA that gets shared amongst all the classrooms. Another item for early education, a need was occupational therapy. And Megan thought that it might be best to look at this through the lens of a contracted service as opposed to bringing another person on board as an employee. So we have built that into her budget at $60,000. We have UCS contracts. Annually, those go up by a little bit. And then we also have other contracted service providers that provide clinical services to our students. So we have those factors built in. And Kate, if you're there, I know that there's a shift in how special education services have only been able to be paid by the SU to independent schools that have been approved by the Agency of Education. That I believe is shifting. So more independent schools are going to be able to begin offering IEP services. So we're anticipating that we'll see some of the schools that our students go to from North Bennington and Sandgate. We might start seeing little bills for IEP services from those schools, which we haven't in the past. Let's see. Projected increase, yes. Security and legal fees.
Is that going the right way? I thought that they were going to be receiving bills from us. And you say
We've been sending, in some instances, our staff, you know, goes to provide the service. But again, and Kate would be better versed to explain this, but I understand that if a family wanted to send a student to a school that wasn't identified on the AOE's list, then the services couldn't be provided, and therefore the family was responsible.
but the service is provided, and now they're going to be required to pay for that services. The way I got it at the Vermont School Board Association. On that line, that's
Well, we're required to pay for it.
Because of Act 173 and the census-based model that, you know, all the school districts are getting a flat amount for their students, however, wherever they're being educated.
that's right.
So we're also in this budget, a couple ads in the human resources section of contracted services. The exit interview services that we started this past year is currently being funded again through ESSER, but we know that is going to end. So we've built that into this budget here. It's about $8,700. And then also a timekeeping system that integrates with our current software. So we've got a placeholder in for that as well, about $18,000 for a timekeeping system. So we have multiple hundreds of employees that are hourly employees that don't have a time tracking system. So it's something we really need to look at. And the absence management system that we have in place now, it's called Frontline. This is when somebody's going to be out for a personal day, professional day, or if they're sick. They log in, they say they're going to be out. This is the software that actually automatically assigns subs to come in if they're needed. So there's a small increase that we're projecting to that fee going forward into next year. And then the audit fees, there's a small increase on those too, based on just the additional demands and expansion of what the auditors have to do, particularly with federal funds. They have to do more than one single audit for us because we receive more than $750,000 in multiple grants. And we're also shifting our fixed asset management over to them as well. It's only $250 a piece per district. Arlington had been using it for years. So it's very beneficial at that price point to have the auditors take care of it. So that's in as well.
On these contracted services that only the districts that use the services pay for them. Is that true, or is it divided about?
So for instance, like Suzer IT is in that line, contracted service that they provide.
Yeah.
So some of their fee is paid by all districts because of the service that they provide us.
Yeah.
But then also because they're managing our services in all of our buildings, a greater portion of that is paid by the operating districts. So it's that factor.
So like on an example of adjustments for potential contracted service clinicians through United Counseling Service.
Those are special education or student services. They would be district specific.
Districts, okay. It was just spelled out here more on the front page, MAU, and I'm not saying go back, obviously, I was just.
And some of them are because they're building specific, and these tend to be sometimes more global or union wide.
Yeah.
Because we can move them around. And we would never say that we couldn't service a student because of how they're being funded.
Yeah.
We're always making sure that the service is being provided, and then choose to make sure that the correct entity is paying for it. Okay. Operations is the next. So this grouping is kind of inclusive of anything from our utilities to travel reimbursements to advertising, printing, our telephones, internet, all of it. So just a couple of the significant things we're seeing here is, so the leased vehicles that we're potentially going to move forward with in that trial that we're doing right now for out of district transportation, and the fuel costs that I've built in for that. And then because of the increase in students that we have coming into our SU that are English language learners, we're seeing an increase of the 3 teachers that we have right now traveling. Like we have one that's been typically based here that's traveling to Arlington every day to service students that are there. So be able to compensate them for using their personal vehicles. So not a huge increase, 2.8% overall on that. So the contracted transportation, so this is just U4's line. About what the contract is. Tuition line includes our pre-K tuition so any students that we have in pre-K that are attending a partner program, we contract with them and pay them the rate, which hasn't come from the AOE yet. That one typically goes up about $100 a year as well. We had been budgeting for about 350 seats SU-wide. We scaled that back this year to about 275. Right now, if you were to look at And you actually.
We
could
used to scale it back, like there are just fewer kids in the pre-K program, or you've limited the.
No, but so the seats are still available. It's a gamble essentially. So it just seems like historically we haven't used all of them,
Okay.
but the Bismarck that we're at seemed safe. But if you look at the budget stat, I think that's in the packet tonight. I think we only have of the over $1 million in that line. I think we have less than $20,000 that's not encumbered right now. So through the course of the year, the numbers of kids that are attending pre-K change. So we never really know. So we're at 275. And I think Megan's on the fence, like she really doesn't want to reduce that anymore because we're teetering on that point of if, you know, we had more kids come out, then we'll be running a deficit on that line. And then there has been an increase in students attending day placements this year, projecting that we're going to see those placements remain for next year. So those tuitions are built into that line, and those are specific to the district that the students are enrolled in, and we're currently seeing that in SVU, ESD, and non-Anthony.
Is there anything in the pre-K legislation that will bring more programs into the, how do you guys identify partner programs? And will there be more eligible programs? I don't remember the specifics of whether or not that adds resources and if that would impact an increased number of students.
I don't know about change in legislation. Megan might be able to speak to that, but currently to receive the maximum amount of tuition per student, the partner program has to have like a licensed educator, and they have to have a certain number of stars for their program.
Yeah.
There's basically a checklist of items that they have to have. There's certain policies and procedures they have to follow. We have a pretty robust contract that we execute with them. And then there are some where we are sending our teachers to those schools to provide the education, so they get a slightly reduced tuition rate. The changes to that, I know Megan had, I think, gone before the legislature last session, to talk about potential changes. I'm not aware of what the impacts might be. So the next line is supplies. This encompasses pretty much anything that we have in any of our buildings that costs less than $5,000. So we think about a computer as being a piece of equipment because of its single value. It doesn't meet the criteria to be capitalized or essentially depreciated over a certain number of years, so it gets expensed on an annual basis. Books, online subscriptions. So as we've continued to implement and follow our own fixed asset procedure, we're shifting funding from our equipment lines up into our supply lines. And another thing you're seeing in between these two lines of supplies and equipment is some of the software that we have that does actually exceed the threshold, so the $5,000. The guidance that we received from our auditors is that because it's an annual cost and it's essentially paying for a license, we're just expensing it every year. So we've actually moved those expenses out of the equipment slash, I'm gonna have it on the narrative here, equipment slash capitalized software. It's now been rolled up into the supply line. That's the kind of the offset increase you're seeing there, just the shift in those categorizations. And the final one on this layout is the dues and fees. And we usually see a minor increase to our membership with the Vermont School Board Association, so we factored that in. And then some of our professional dues are up there as well. I did just want to point out, if you look in the actual for 23, it's kind of a significant like blip that kind of jumped up. That is specific to our workers' comp audit. That was a prior year expense. And when we have a prior year expense on books that have already been closed, it gets categorized in that group of dues and fees. So that's what you're seeing there. I'm going to go through the other breakdown by department or function if that's the will of the board, or I can be quiet and let you all.
That's a lot to go through it, absorb. Looking at it, and I see the need, these are things that we definitely need in the district, and we need these for kids. I just don't know how we can, do them more efficient in terms of people versus, equipment to be able to manage a lot of the things that we may not have to have bodies for someday out in the future. I don't know how we get there, because these price increases are really healthy and they're not going away. But some of the software issues can minimize the impact of what we will be able to achieve the AI types of things that we need to be able to get as quick as possible and not have a lot of bodies and make multitask individuals. And I know we start with license in terms of certain fields and saying this is the type of license that you need to have to be able to do this job, and somebody else along that line, whether that data, and I see you put it, we want to have a data person correlate all of the data for everybody, and maybe someday out here we'll be able to look at some reduction somewhere. I don't see it now.
I mean, the percentage increase in a way isn't surprising. It's everything that we've been hearing and talking about. If we try to just roll every
Right.
ESSER position into a general budget, it's gonna be a huge hit. So, I mean, I think to be able to justify any kind of an increase like this, having as much data as possible, the org chart, the number of students that are served, the performance data, how efficiently are we operating this massive business entity that we're running? I know that we're talking about all of us here, but very locally, I look at if this goes through, we're looking at probably a $1.8 million assessment for Arlington alone for our small number of students, and that we've used to be under $1 million. So this is $1 million increase in assessments over 3 years. $1 million. Our voters are going to want to know what we're getting for that. So that's not arguing what is being delivered. This is going to require a lot of data to back it up.
Yeah, and that's basically what I was saying as well. I'm saying we need this. The kids need it, but parents and other people need it to be able to understand it and see how this is impacting. If we don't do this, you're going to be in a lot more of a problem, because we have to save and change to bring all the kids back from COVID and other things that have just turned this whole world around.
I think another piece of data that would be helpful to have is how our total budget compares to like-sized SUs. I don't know who else could be that, but it would be helpful to say that we're not out of our minds. The only one that I could find online was Windsor Southeast, looks like there are about 2,400, 2,500 students, and they're 31 a year ago, but they're not far off. But they're still they're
Yeah.
quite a bit less.
I think the demographics when we, are looking at, although it's shifting, the demographics here compared to other parts of the state.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
We
that
have the same number of students, but the needs down here.
Right, and that's what I was gonna say, the need is what we know we got a bigger need. I mean, and that's what we're trying to combat.
yeah.
And one of the things that Nicole, Superintendent Colquhoun and I have been talking about a little bit is just really looking at the size of the ASU as a whole and just how it's set up and how can it be operated? How could it operate more efficiently, or efficiently is maybe not the right word, sustainably is probably the better word. And I'm sure everybody's having, all across the state, people are having a similar conversation, but it is something that will be a core goal of, I feel should be a core goal of this board as we go forward over these next couple of years, because the way it isn't sustainable.
I agree.
When am I
I
supposed
have
to- wait,
6
when
of
am I
these to
supposed
put together.
When am I supposed to take that petition out about Reddit again?
I personally don't feel the need to have you go, I would rather look at this myself and digest it and be prepared to ask some questions that maybe as part of our next meeting than have you go through it today and it just be overlooked.
It's all the same stuff, just kind of spliced and diced
Yeah,
in
right.
a different way. So
Gives you a little bit more look at a line item.
What other questions could we have? I've written down some of the questions that what other information would be helpful at a subsequent meeting?
You said that later we'll get student population numbers and stuff like that, right? In the next round is what you said, right?
Right, the AOE opened up a window that closes this Friday for corrections to our average daily membership. So I should be getting basically the first round of what used to be equalized pupils, which is now going to be a long-term weighted average daily membership. I would suspect probably mid-December. And that's not going to directly impact this board. You're going to see it more so when you get down to your local level. In the union districts where we have to kind of parse everything out between the secondary and elementary. And then we'll have more information rolling in, so we'll have the December 1st letter from the tax commissioner will be out this week. There's also pieces of information from the agency that come out that are tied to tech ed tuition, so I haven't seen that, so that's gonna impact both Arlington and Mount Anthony and Sandgate. Pre-K tuition, there's other pieces, so we're a little early, but it's good to start looking at this now because it's gonna roll quickly.
And as you know, we can't finalize anyone else's budget till we finalize the SU budget, so everything is preliminary at this point.
To the point that Leon was just making, we were making collectively, it may not impact this budget in a kind of direct financial way, though the way, based on what I watched today with the webinar, which is part of my chair's report, I'll just say now, if you have not watched the webinar on the Vermont School Board Association website regarding Act 127, I highly recommend it. It's incredibly informative. I do feel like it's going, I may have misinterpreted it, but I do feel like we're going to get a
The recalculate, the way it's going to be calculated.
the way it's going to be calculated is going to be indicative of the student population that we are serving in a way that's not just equalized pupil. It's going to be weighted based on in many ways based on need. And so that is going to give us a view from district to district, I feel, from district to district, from region to region of what is the population that we're serving. And when you learn more about, when you know the population we're serving, we know the population we're serving, but it'll give us that view as to how it compares and at least a perspective for us to go back to people in our town with to say, this is why it's, this is why it's so expensive.
And that we need, we gotta fix these problems. And the problems with the students that we're having, we gotta fix them. We can't just let them go without making them productive individuals when they go from one level right to the next and go out into the community. We have to fix them. And we have a lot of them here.
And we have to give, yes, exactly. We have to give the team of people working with these students all the tools that they need to address these.
Right. That's right.
But I think we also have to look at, what are the needs of the students? We have not seen that data. Like, how many kids are proficient in reading and math and science? We know at the state level there's concern, but where are we at the district level? The state compared to national is lower than the national average, but where are we at the local level? I think we
Cutting
need
out
that
a
data
bit.
too to say, what do our kids need? So.
Right, because at some point, just putting more resources to it, if we can't quantify or justify the impact that it's having.
Well, I know we
It's
can
just more
justify it. I mean, I know from what I know, we've been seeing the the information and the items.
Well, we know what
That's
the
why I'm
need
saying that.
is, but without, yeah,
So we just need to make sure we get it in a form where people can actually see and say, hey, this is not just somebody else's problem. This is all of our problem and things that we gotta fix.
sure.
Jeff, your point is a good one. Academic performance is certainly part of it, but it's becoming more and more clear to me the longer I sit on a board, it's only a really small part. Or it's only a part of it. It's not.
But that's what the community sees, and the community will say, "Why aren't our kids reading at the high school level?" And that's what you see in the public. And
Well, and that's where the data that says, "Hey, we've got X, Y, or Z student or a number of students that are impacted in." We have a very diverse student body that we're serving, and that impacts things like test scores.
Mhm.
Anyway,
But speaking to what you say to the voters, for a $36 million budget, we've got to have some pretty concrete information about how that's being spent and the impact that it's having.
right.
And where are you looking for efficiencies? This is all ads. So every ad that happens here is potentially going to cut something at the local level. So at our meeting, we went back and asked the principals to cut hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the budget.
The next item on the agenda is to set subsequent meeting dates.
Stage stake because there's multiple meetings in play. Starting. So Monday of next week is negotiations and community meetings. The Union Elementary budget meeting is on Tuesday.
Yeah.
MAU budget's Wednesday. So I don't know if you want to meet as quickly as next week or go back one more week.
How long do you think would you think the MAU budget meeting would last?
MAU budget is what, December sixth?
December sixth at
At five.
5. Want to consider doing something after.
That was, I think, where I was.
Remember it?
I don't know if I'll have time because I
may
still
not have
have the SVU, ESC and MAU together for next.
So that's if you get it on Friday. If,
Yeah.
right,
A
so,
lot of
think-
work to do.
yeah. So we're looking then really at the week of the 11th. Policy is that Monday right now. Monday the 11th, December 11th.
That's right.
We have a
We regular
The
meeting.
regular,
Yes,
union elementary board meeting is Tuesday. Arlington and
Spinelli,
North Bennington is Wednesday.
there's Spinelli Tuesday, the 12th. Only me, I guess, yeah.
Bring you back to
So-
the 13th.
Thursday, the 14th is the first night without anybody else meeting.
Arlington's canceling on the 13th.
Are they?
Yeah, we're gonna meet on the.
21st.
Yeah.
So we could do it that, we have North Bennington at 6:30, which will be in the small conference room here, so we could do it then. Here.
at 6:30.
Or, no, I want to stay away from 6:30 because I'll have.
Oh,
Maybe
that starts at 6:30.
That starts at 6:30, yeah.
Is 5 doable
It is from us on the
on
13th.
the 13th?
So the next meeting will be Wednesday, December 13th. 5 p.m. We don't need to be done at 6:30. I just have to open the North Bennington meeting at 6:30, so.
Hey, do you expect you'll have for the ESD meeting on Tuesday and the MAU meeting on Wednesday, at least a preliminary or early snapshot of what will be coming from the ed fund? How that, I mean, so much of that factors into the talking points that we're gonna need even on this board
Right.
is,
So the December 1st letter is going to include the property yield. So that's gonna tell us what the ed fund can actually support.
and you already know it's not equalized pupil, it's the long term.
I can do a projection.
I
but
said
it's
based on
not
data
current.
you've given to them.
Data that they've given, yes, that we've uploaded, but then they also, in the calculator that the AOE provided me, some of the data that's in that is outdated. So I think when I get the information from the AOE, the real information, it's basically the density information has to be updated.
I see, because you said that was,
And there's so many other factors.
Yep.
Yes, I'll certainly share whatever I can as soon as it becomes available.
The reality is it may be early January before we finalize the SU budget.
Yeah, so our warnings have to be posted between January 25th and February 4th. So we really do have a good chunk of January. We can be.
This is what, the pressure we on to get this budget done, so we know what everybody else's assessment will be, but and I was calculating out meeting projections. It'll be maybe second week of January before we finalize this.
If we do it sooner, that would be great.
Yeah, right, but absolutely.
sure. Okay, any other? Guess we'll move into item 6 on the agenda, which is the chair's report. Leon asked for a few minutes to talk about some of his learnings from the Vermont School Board Association event up at Lake Warren.
Yes. Thank you. This, I don't think I said it once. Anyway, the annual school board meeting was just great. And, they're trying to do everything they can to help school boards and districts and point out things. So, it helps to be a member in presence to be able to talk about the things that go on in our district. One of the things that's hurting us all right now. I'll read. This is the Vermont School Board in recent years have been a growing number of seeing a growing number of school board members fill board member positions by way of appointments by rather the electoral process. At any given time, the state has approximately 30 unfilled school board members position. And so there is a need to go out and try to do something out there. It says our students deserve full staff board positions and qualified individuals duly elected by the voters. And it makes a difference when you're duly elected by the voters as opposed to what you're having to do go out and appoint someone. So they've asked all of the boards to please join the VSBA to encourage people to run for school boards, they put out a pamphlet and a leaflet for everyone that attended the meeting to talk about what to do for school board members. And the big thing out of this, they are trying to do some other stuff. They said through its recent launch of information campaign, Get On Board, VSBA is seeking to raise the profile of school board service and encourage more community members to become candidates. As a result of that, they've gone a step further and says that VSBA is providing a pre-board candidate webinar on December the 12th for training for anybody that's interested in wanting to become a school board member, free. And they go on to talk about some of the things that they're out there and ask you to register. But the basic thing, they said they want our newspapers and they want our school board members to go and seek information out to the public. And they've gone a step further. They went on and made letters. They prepared some letter formats and some information that says all you need to do to make this your own is you can download and copy it and run it in the paper. There's some in here that talk about social media ways to go out here and get through to get to the different people that talk about the different things. They've done a lot of things that we can just look at and pick some to go ahead and run in the paper, run on CAT TV, send to individuals out here, and you don't have to do a lot of thinking, but they've already made the letters up for you to be able to just download and copy. And that's what you talk about. So it made it easy for us. We need school board members that go through the electoral process and to fill these positions. And if we educate them, they'll probably be willing to help out.
The date of the webinar again was what?
December the 12th. And they, contact the director of board services, Debbie Singer at the School Board Association, and it's on there. It's on these Vermont School Board weekly updates.
Yes.
So if you get that, you can just click on it and then pick out the information and go ahead and help get the word out that we need help. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. And then I already said the main point of what my chair's report tonight was going to be, and that was just asking members of the board to please go onto the Vermont School Board Association website, and it's right on the front page. Scroll down a little bit, and you'll see the webinar for what is Act 127. I think it's going to be very helpful for this whole process if if you have an understanding of that. It's substantially different than what we've come to know over the years. That's all I had. Any other business?
We adjourn.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.